Thank you so much, Gary. It is a true honor to have you join us as part of the Light Your Leadership Summit 2024, the VP edition.
Pleasure to be here.
Thank you. So, Gary, you've had an incredible career and leadership journey. What are some of the key highlights that you would like to share with members of our audiences?
So right at the top, um, there's a difference between management and leadership. So management is about the execution, and leadership is about inspiration. So I think that's if you just think of those two things differently, because people often confuse the two. So I think also I would start by saying that the people listening to your show should know that they can engineer their own success and happiness, but it requires more than just the hope and desire to do so. It requires planning, requires execution, as we mentioned, but with a foundation of their own passion, commitment, and empathy. And with all due respect to hopes and prayers, they're not plans and they're not really actions,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I heard a long time ago that there are really only two things you need to do to be successful. And I think it was Charles Schwab that said this. He said, first, you have to make a list. And then number two, you have to do the list, right? And that's what's always resonated in my journey. So I became a journalist, a reporter, TV news anchor, even though I did not major in journalism. By the way, most journalists around the world who cover wars and human crisis didn't go to J school either. So but as a reporter, I got to cover some of the top stories in the New York area and even traveled around the world to cover stories like the crisis in Kosovo and the Second Gulf War. When I left TV to be more engaged with my two young sons at the time and built a media business that led to great opportunities, including running U.S. operations for a global news service called Rise. Um, and even when I left that and went back to corporate PR and content development, I kept my focus of my goals in mind, right? Which is write the list, do the list. And I do that to this day. But there was a time when my organizational philosophy got away with me, found myself kind of spinning, didn't know why. And then I had to, and I think a lot of executives, a lot of people on this path may find themselves in this place. And what I did was I had to rediscover why this had gotten away from me. And the thing that I discovered is that fear was playing a huge role in why I wasn't even getting my list done,
Mm-hmm.
right? In fact, fear, kept me even from deciding what I wanted to do. And so in this reexamination in my life, I figured out what I sold out on in my journey. So I wrote down what things that I said I wanted to do, didn't do them, and what were my excuses. Yet another list, but um, these all come together. So in that process, I also had to figure out what was my relationship with these different aspects of my life. At first, I figured out that I was looking at my life as this huge, this one piece pie, when actually it was slices of many pies, so many slices of the big pie. So what was my relationship with my career? What was my relationship with my body, with my family, with my money, with my friends, etc. And then I made decisions about what kind of relationship I wanted to have with these slices of my life and what I needed to do to get to that point. So subsequently, I got back on track, right? Found a great position that I really wanted with a company that I really wanted to work for. Uh, I ended up writing a book, um, and the book is entitled "You've Fallen But You Can Get Up." It's in pre-sales editing now. Uh, and I was able to reclaim a part of my mind that had kind of that kind of gotten away from me. That part of my mind that allowed me to calm down and be more patient and be more energetic. And this has basically reinvigorated my journey and on my path to whatever it is that I want to do. So I mean that's the key message to your listeners is they can engineer their success and their happiness.
Mm. That is such a great insight, and it's inspirational because a lot of times, we feel like we're stuck with what we have, and here you are, you completely, refreshed, reinvented, reinvigorated yourself and your career just by doing a lot of self-examination in terms of self-awareness, reflection, and I love that you brought in the idea of fear, because one of the things
Mm,
I run into a lot particularly with very senior leaders like vice presidents, or I guess
mhm.
I imagine CEOs as well, but vice presidents because they do report to C levels, and it's the fear, and I hear imposter syndrome a lot,
Right, right.
right? Uh,
Yeah.
which is interesting because you figured, you know, the company, the organization has vouched for you. They put you in this senior role. They believe in you because otherwise you wouldn't have gotten the role. And yet there's still that fear of not being enough or doing enough, etc.
Right.
So which part of your self-reflection helped you to get through that piece?
So it all starts with your thoughts, right? You have to be your best coach. So the human brain processes about 70,000 thoughts per day. So can you take a guess as to what percentage of the average thoughts of a person are positive?
Oh, yes. Well, I've been working on myself, so but I think it's like 90% or something like that are negative.
So yes, so 80%,
Wow.
at least according to one study from the National Science Foundation, found that 80% of thoughts in a human being are negative.
Hmm.
And so part of getting through this imposter syndrome is figuring out what is your negative inner dialogue and how are you changing it, right? And you have these voices in your head, these things that are constantly talking to you and telling you how you should feel, how you should act, and they're driven by different motivations. Now, I went through a training course, and they identified these three negative voices, the Handel group, and they identified these negative three voices as the chicken, the brat, and the weather reporter,
Hmm.
right? So the weather reporter says essentially, "Oh, here I am. I'm stuck in this job, and here comes the clouds. It's coming in, and it's almost like you're telling yourself, I'm in this situation, and there's nothing I can do about it,
Hmm.
right?" The chicken is the fear, obviously, that we talked about, that tells you it's really more practical to not follow with this bold plan or these bold actions that you have. You should just travel, stay in your lane, do this, do that, do the other. Um, and then the brat is the impetuous part of ourselves, which we basically say, I'm having this fried chicken, even though my doctor told me not to, right? I mean, that's kind of the simplistic way to view it, but it is our impetuous nature.
Hmm.
So when it comes to the imposter syndrome, that is really, really attached to the fear and to like the weather reporting. Like, well, I'm here, I'm in this position, but I'm gonna be stuck here because I'm not good enough, and the clouds are coming in, and here comes the hurt. You gotta stop that. And then you have to be your best coach. Most people talk to themselves. If 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 you could split a person, if you could split their negative inner dialogue and make their negative inner dialogue an adult, and then you are the child, right? If you walked up on someone talking to a kid the way most of us talk to ourselves, you would interject. You would shake your finger at that adult and say, "How dare you talk to that kid like that?" Right? So we really have to push ourselves in this way. And it's more than just positive thinking, which I do believe in, but you have to change your thoughts. And in when you change your thoughts, you will change your actions. Change your actions, you'll change your patterns, change your behavior, change your character, change your life and your legacy. And it really starts with these baby steps of pushing through your own mind, to figure out. I mean, you have to go really, you have to go through yourself. You have to go in order to get out.
Hmm. And I love the way you also practice that, write the thing, then do the thing, right? Because it sounds so
Mhm.
simple. Sometimes we overcomplicate stuff. So when you're thinking in those terms of like, well, what do I need to do to get through this? And taking a look at the mindset, I think is definitely key.
Hmm.
Right. Left to our own devices, we will talk ourselves out of anything good, right?
Right. Anything. We'll
Any
talk ourselves out of anything.
Yeah. And I mean, even though you went to Kosovo, you went to different war zones and dangerous places, and in
Hmm.
there, I guess, that fear is justified because you want to make sure you come out alive. And yet we transpose the same thing to corporations.
Hmm.
Now,
Absolutely.
does that fear feel the same or different?
Yeah, I mean, it is not the same as being in a war zone and thinking you're going to be blowing to bits, but they're not they're cousins. This
Mm,
kind of fear, they're very closely related. Because people get paralyzed in that very same way.
right.
Um, and it's one of those things that if uh, and they say courage isn't an absence of fear; it is acting or doing your job in spite of it, right? So, and that's where people have to be much more courageous with their own lives and their own decisions. And it's as simple as one foot in front of the other,
Yeah.
right? So every day I make up a list in the morning, every work day anyway, and I follow that list every day, every day before I start my journey, you know? So here, and I call it and it's not more, it's not so much of a to-do list as much as how I want to feel at the end of the day. So if I'm making this list at 7 in the morning, how do I want to feel about these things at 7 o'clock at night? All right. So I'm already sort of uh forecasting my mood and did I get this thing done or not? And and it's a combination of a to-do list and also sort of like an attitude adjustment device.
Mm,
And I think if people, and it really is kind of fake it till you make it, if people see themselves at the end of the day feeling good, and then they have all of these things that they want to do that are going to help them get there, invariably it will work out. It doesn't always. Everybody has bad days. But I think if you imagine yourself having a good day with all the things you have to do, more often than not, you'll end up having a good day. But as opposed to being some like a piece of driftwood on the ocean getting tossed about by this wave or that. If you have a focus and a clear direction on where you're going mentally, you're going to end up in that place more often than not.
mm. That is that is very sage advice, and it's a testament to the power of our minds. And we can either fabricate fear scenarios that are negative, or we can
Mhm.
really pay attention and start to shift that thinking to create, the days that we want, the weeks that we want, the life that we want. And
Exactly. And
yeah,
it's brick by brick every
great.
day, brick by brick every day, doing these little things that amount to seismic changes in your life.
Hmm. And so I imagine these are the secrets to helping you have had such a wonderful career in terms of all the way to being the former CEO and the founder of Great Pitch Media, as well as now being the VP of Communications at Deutsche Bank. Are there other things that you want to highlight about that?
So one of the most sage pieces of advice that I ever got was from my mother, who's
Mm,
probably one of the most practical women you'd ever meet. When she came here and she worked multiple jobs, and she came here from Jamaica with my father. And now, even though factions are now trying to demonize that word, but that's a whole other story. Um, when I found myself in one of those periods where I wasn't really sure what was going to happen next, she said to me, if you find what you love and the money will follow. And
mm,
this comes from a woman who worked two jobs, worked jobs she hated in order to just to pay bills, you know. So if it was coming from her, it was like, wow, that's like kind of like the last thing that I would imagine that you would say. But as a result of that conversation, it led me into journalism and that fabulous first career. So I tell people like you really should find what you want to do. You don't have a lot of time on this planet. Respect time. What's your relationship with time? So you don't have a lot of time on the planet, so you should really focus on doing what you want to do, right? You don't want to find yourself in a hospital bed and then you spent the last 20 years of your life wasting it. Yeah. So that's another piece of advice that I got. And that also drove me in, to write the book and get it done. And something else I would say to people, remember at the beginning I mentioned empathy,
Yes.
right? When when I just graduated college, my very first job was with an insurance company, and in that world, I heard a lot of positive, positive influence, positive thinking, and one of the quotes that always stuck with me is that you can get anything in life that you want if you help enough other people get what they want. So when you're in this role as vice president, I would advise people to figure out what the people in your universe want, right? And then help them get that, right? And it can be a task during a day, it can be a plan. And that's not talking about overstretching yourself and doing things you're not supposed to do or getting outside your lane. But if you figure out what the people around you, above you, below you, and your contemporaries, what they ultimately want, and you can help get them there, you will create an energy around yourself that will pay off because people will know that you're collaborative, that you're selfless, you have energy, and they want you to be around them. Because a lot of people who get promotions weren't the greatest salespeople. They may not be the great technical executors of plan and policy, but people like having them around. They know that this person would be an advocate for me or help me do what I need to do in my job. So that's the kind of energy you want to try to create as well.
I love that, Gary. I think that's such an important message about when we are leaders is thinking about what do others need to unleash their potential, right? And which is a
Exactly.
perfect segue into my next question is as a staunch advocate for diversity, based on your insights and your lived experiences, what message do you have for senior executives about unleashing the potential of leaders with diverse backgrounds?
So we are in this interesting phase now of diversity. And I always like to say I was involved in DEI before it was an acronym, when it was just diversity, right? So, you know, for senior leaders who have a position, who have an opportunity to create a team and to build a team around them, do not fall into the false narrative that DEI is a zero-sum game or a road to mediocrity, right? That's a false narrative. That's a lie, right? And in providing opportunity for people outside your own demographic isn't carving out yourself or other people in the dominant culture. Now, the data is clear from several studies done by Harvard and Forbes, just to name a few, that more diverse cultures make more money. Full stop. The more diverse your culture is in your corporate environment, the more money you will make, right? So that should be it for anybody who's in a business and wants to get and wants to have a good share of return for their investors or their private company. Diverse leaders make better decisions. They are more creative, and they get a better return on their investment in the workforce, and in terms of loyalty and production and productivity. So a more diverse environment from a corporate standpoint also is less likely to make mistakes in the marketplace that get them canceled or severely punished by either the customers or stakeholders, right? Um, I don't know. H&M a few years ago launched a fall back to school campaign, and one of the pictures in this ad had this young this young African American boy in a green sweatshirt that said "cutest monkey in the jungle."
Oh,
Right? So that got past a whole bunch of boardrooms at different stages from concept to counter. And it's clear that those meetings did not have people that didn't have one person in there who could say, stop, this is a bad idea.
mm,
Another classic example of this is probably Dolce and Gabbana. And your viewers can look this up. Just look up Dolce and Gabbana chopsticks. And what you'll find is that Dolce and Gabbana had an ad campaign, a video that it created for a trade show. So this wasn't a commercial. This was just a trade show, and it was a rather offensive video with an Asian woman using chopsticks to try to eat a pizza.
oh,
And this trade show was in China. So when that became like kind of public, first when the people saw it, literally overnight, over a course of a few weeks, the value of Dolce Gabbana dropped by a quarter.
mm,
They lost so much money. They've since recovered, but it took them like 10 years to get back to it.
yeah.
So, a more diverse environment, you make more money, and you're less likely to make a mistake that's going to cost you
Yeah. And and I would add to all that, which is great information and so true, is that it makes it such a richer place to work and a much better culture, more engaging. Like how interesting is it to go to work and be able to share different experiences and different views and insights and just relate and become friends with people from all kinds of backgrounds, so there's
money. Absolutely.
so many levels that this is beneficial. And so thank you for sharing those insights for people who are really focused, of course, on the ROI and also
Mhm.
understanding that it just makes better workplaces to have people from diverse backgrounds. It's more interesting. And there's less
Right.
echo chamber too, right? So just to wrap things up a little bit, you mentioned that you wrote a book. So it's
You've fallen, but you can get up, overcoming crisis and failure.
right. And so
Mhm.
what would you say are like the top two pieces of advice in that book?
The top two pieces of advice from that book is you are not the failure, failure is the failure, right? And failure is a part of is failure is a part of most success stories, right? So if you can just have the ability to get up, not feel sorry for yourself, dust yourself off, um, then you can move forward. If you're still alive after the failure, you can get back. You can't get your in many cases you can't get your old life back, but you can still have a great new version of your life and a new journey for yourself. So those are the two things I would say. That'd be the headlines from that.
Mm, such a great message, that there's always room for new beginnings. Doesn't matter what age you are and what you've been through. And in fact, whatever you've lived through is going to be the basis and the foundation to help you launch even higher next time around, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, I love it. So, Gary, thank you so much for sharing. Based on what you know today, what would be your sage advice to your 20-year-old self and also to any current or aspiring vice presidents?
So when I go to the high schools to speak, I always tell the younger people as if I was talking to my 18-year-old self, right? You should always know that you have a choice and that you can create a life that has options. Um, and as I said before, you have to really start to identify as a young person what your negative inner dialogue is, because as the older you get, the bigger the megaphone is for those voices in your head, right?
Mm,
Those two, that's like primary. Um, and I would also tell my younger self to be much more balanced and mindful, because the part of your brain that you burn out when you have your head down, the nose to the grindstone mentality, and that's the same part of the your brain that you burn out that earns you money. It's the creative part of your brain that you use when you're burning yourself out. So you should protect that as a priority. Um, and I also tell myself that you should, you know, just take a more balanced look at your relationship with time. As I said before, you're young, but your time is limited. It's like an hourglass, so you want to make use of that time. And finally, I would tell a young Gary that he should trust that he is worthy of the good things that he is getting, not be in a rush for anything, but they should trust the process, and he should not rush into relationships or career moves because he thinks that somehow this is going to be the best and last option. So my younger self would probably have, treated the game more like chess than checkers, like something I had to bang through because, I knew that, if I don't jump on this now, they'll find me out, and then I'll miss this opportunity. Just relax, trust the process, and know that you're worthy of all good things that you get.
Wow, thank you so much for sharing your journey, your wisdom, your insights. That is great advice. And any current or aspiring VP out there would be very wise to follow and understand that what you shared today is very important. It's going to help them to love their life as a leader. So thank you so much, Gary.
Yeah, it's very important to love your life.